fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to another episode of the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin, joined by former Eagles, Cardinals tight end Ed Smith, also the host of the Bleav in Cardinals podcast. He's at Ed Smith Speaks on Twitter, X, whatever they're calling it these days. Welcome back to the show, Ed. How are we doing today?
Oh, Kevin, great to be on with you, man. And just a little caveat, I know we were talking before the show. I'm actually heading back over December 9th. They're doing the weekend, December 9th. The Falcons are celebrating that NFC Championship team. 25 years, man. I can't believe it. But I'll be back over for that celebration, so I'm looking forward to that, man.
Yeah. Well, you played for a lot of teams, and that's gonna be I bet that was one of the fun ones, one of the real fun ones.
Yeah. Those 2 years there were the best in my career, man. And I'm looking forward to getting back and seeing some old faces and celebrating, man.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing about that. I bet that'll be a great time. And it's nice to remember the good times for the Falcons, because we haven't had a lot of those recently. And I know that the Cardinals are in the same boat right now, sitting at 1-8. But really, they haven't been that bad. Like at 1-8. I mean, obviously last week with Clayton Tune was a disaster, but before with Josh Dobbs, a competitive team, the one win coming against the Cowboys, which is pretty hilarious. We'll dive into that. We'll get Ed's take on all that stuff before we take off with previewing this game. Talk about the Cardinals a bit more. Let me get to a quick word from our sponsor, betonline.ag. Folks, the last of the major pro sports leagues is off and rolling, and college basketball is ready to go as well. And BetOnline remains your top spot for all your live betting action and contests. Whether that be the NFL, college football, UFC, NHL, all of them are in full swing. And BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions. You can get all the hoops betting action along with the NFL and college football through the Super Bowl and college football playoff at your fingertips with both desktop and now mobile access at any time. So what are you waiting for, folks? Head to that website, betonline.ag today. And remember to use our promo code Bleav, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. And then we'll just take a quick break here to bring you this week's prize picks from Prize Picks, folks. We'll be right back. What's up, guys? Welcome to another week of Prize Picks here on the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Knight, of course, here to bring you this week's picks. And I think we got a good one. We're on a hot streak now, right, guys? We got a big dub last week. And we're gonna go back to the well on several of these, because I think with the Falcons starting Taylor Heineke, I actually feel a little bit more confident in the Falcons passing yardage. Not necessarily that they're going to score a lot, but we'll get to that. Starting off, of course, with the staple, right? Younghoe Koo, more than 1.5 field goals made. The Falcons have red zone issues. We all know this. Younghoe Koo is pretty much automatic with his field goals. He's one of the most accurate kickers in the NFL, and getting more than one, getting 2 field goals essentially, is one of the safest picks you can make on this Falcons team. Maybe the safest week in and week out. So we are sticking with Younghoe Koo. And I just have ultimate faith in Younghoe Koo. And if he doesn't make it one week, hey, he's earned our trust, obviously. We're going to go back to Taylor Heineke this week as well. They were playing a much tougher defense last week in the Vikings. The Cardinals defense, nowhere near as good. It could lead to some wonky stuff happening in this one. I do think that Kyler Murray will sort of invigorate that Cardinals offense to the point where the Falcons will need to score. They're not just going to blow them out and just lean on the running game all day. I think they're going to have to throw the ball. We know Heineke is going to throw the ball deep. It only takes a couple of those big plays plus the rest of this passing volume for this offense, and his number at 216.5 passing yards. I mean, that's pretty low. So we're as long as it stays that low, I'm going to keep going back to that, going with more than 216.5 passing yards for Heineke. Last week, I Bleav he was at 240, and that was in a game where the passing game really wasn't that great. It was okay, and a lot of it came on that one screen to Jonnu Smith. But again, nowhere near as difficult an opponent this week as the Vikings. I think Heineke will have time and probably surpass this number without too much trouble. Fingers crossed, right? And then, of course, the third one has to be a non-Falcon. Don't love the Cardinals players this week because, again, we got a new quarterback coming in. We don't really know what that offense is going to look like. I just don't trust any of those guys enough to put a pick on. But One guy that I have noticed that's been very consistent, fellow NFC South player, Rachaad White, one of my Senior Bowl guys from a couple years ago. He's been a staple of the Buccaneers passing attack. I think he's had 7 targets or more in each of the last 3 games or something like that. And he's absolutely been crushing these receiving numbers. He's still at 25.5 receiving yards. And I think he's had like 60 plus the last several games. So, that's not a big number for him to hit. And considering the volume he's getting in the passing game, I like that one a lot. So we'll go with Rachaad White more than 25.5 receiving yards. So those are my picks. Feel free to share them, guys. And if you're not familiar with Prize Picks, today's show is, of course, brought to you by Prize Picks. And it is a skill-based daily fantasy game. You pick 2 to 6 players, decide if they will go more or less than their Prize Picks projection. The more you pick, the more you can win, all the way up to 25 times your money on any entry. And at Prize Picks, you are not competing against other people like other daily fantasy. It's just you versus the projections. Prize Picks also has a generous promotion schedule, including weekly promotions like Taco Tuesday, Flex Friday, so keep your eyes open for those. It's not just the NFL, too. There's a whole slate of NBA picks. When the MLB's going, they'll have that. NHL, PGA, college football, everything you could think of, it's pretty much on there, guys. And Prize Picks entries can be made in 60 seconds or less, and they offer those fast withdrawals. It's that easy. And guys, all first-time users that deposit and use our promo code DBB, Dirty Birds and Brews, you guys will receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. That means if you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you an additional $100. If you deposit $50, Prize Picks will give you $50. Remember to make sure and use our promo code DBB when you sign up to get that deposit match, and helps us out too. Lets them know they found Prize Picks through us. Helps us out. Really appreciate that. And let me go ahead and put the map up here for you guys as well. Says Prize Picks is daily fantasy. It's available in 31 states, Washington, D.C., and most of Canada. It's the best way to have action on the game in states like California, Florida, Texas, Georgia, notably, right? Georgia, and over 70% of the U.S. So take a look at that to make sure it's legal in your state. But guys, thanks for hanging out with us here. Hope we nail it this week. We'll check in on the post-game show. And thanks again to Prize Picks for sponsoring this episode. All right, folks, we're back here with Ed Smith, former tight end. He is at Ed Smith Speaks on Twitter to talk about this Cardinals-Falcons game, which has kind of gone off the rails in the last couple weeks. But let's talk about the Cardinals first, Ed. First it was Josh Dobbs, and it was, at the very least, it was entertaining with Josh Dobbs. It was never boring, and the Falcons got a first-hand taste of that this week against the Vikings. And then it was Clayton Tune. Less entertaining, and now apparently it will be Kyler Murray. So what's going on with the quarterback situation there in Arizona? What's your thoughts on how that whole thing is going?
It has been a roller coaster, to say the least, Kevin. I mean, we went through the entire offseason knowing that Kyler wasn't going to be here to start the season. The big question was, when do we get him back, And then, at the beginning of training camp, beginning of the season, right at the end of training camp, they make this move where they go get Joshua Dobbs, and people are like, what are they for? We got, Colt McCoy here to hold down the fort until we get Kyle back. No. They get rid of Colt McCoy, Josh Dobbs, 10 days here. He's the starting quarterback. And as you mentioned, we're 1-8 now, 1-7 during his tenure here. And I kept telling people throughout the ride, Kevin, look, Josh, you have no idea what the job he's doing. One, he just got here to start the season. No OTAs, no learning an offense during the offseason, anything like that. You throw him in there, and then you throw him in there with the talent that we have around him. We got, they stripped this roster down to the bone, got rid of any talent that we had, no running game, no wide receivers on the outside, no offensive line to protect them. And we actually won a game, and I'm thinking, oh, my God. So, you trade him away. You get one sample size of Clayton Tune, and people were clamoring for Clayton Tune, Kevin. They were just, we want to see what he can do. And I kept warning everybody, you don't want to see that. You really don't want to see that, because he's a rookie, 5th-round guy. All due respect to him, he's in the league, but he was not going to do what Josh Dobbs did and then we got to see it last week, got shellacked 27-0, 58 yards of total offense. But knowing that Kyler was behind him coming, that was the only relief. Like if we got rid of Dobbs and it was like, we're just going to roll with Tune the rest of the season, it would be total despair. Now, how much of Murray we're going to see, we can get into that, but at least we're going to see him They probably have a plan moving forward. My biggest issue is how are you going to protect him, for one?
Yeah.
And the other thing is he still has the same amount of talent around him. And he's also coming off this injury where it's just not, okay, the knee is fine, let's just throw him back out there. There's a lot of mental that goes with that as well, Kevin. I experienced a major knee injury in my career. I remember that first time back out on the field, and I was just a tight end, let alone a quarterback who everybody's coming to hunt. So, there's a lot that's going to be to watch in this game. We obviously didn't think it was going to be this, but I'm all locked and loaded to see the next few weeks what happens with Kyler. But welcome him back, and hopefully he can stay healthy and they don't risk any further injury. Especially behind this shambles of an offensive line with no weapons that he has.
Right. And that really seems to have been the biggest key, is that the offensive line has really just kind of fallen apart, and there's been some injuries, there's been some ineffectiveness, some guys taking steps back. But yeah, on the Kyler thing, I mean, I imagine there's a lot of mixed feelings in the fan base, because right now, obviously, the Cardinals in the driver's seat for that number 1 overall pick. They've also got extra picks lined up from trades last year. What's the mood in the fan base? Is it sort of, I imagine there's some that are like, let's see what we got in Kyler, because they think maybe he can be still the long-term quarterback. And I imagine there's some that are like, why is he playing? We need to keep him healthy so we can trade him and we can get, a new quarterback coming in 2024.
At 1-8, there, I was just talking to my partner Jay on our podcast. At 1-8, and I'll explain like this: every team comes into the season. If you're a contender, it's like, look, we have aspirations of getting to the playoffs first, winning the Super Bowl. Those are our lofty goals. Then there are other teams that are just like, look, who knows? We can catch lightning in the bottle, like that 98 Falcons team. Mm-hmm. We can catch lightning in the bottle, and you never know what could happen. And then you start into the season, because nobody goes into the season for the most part. We know the T word is out there, but everybody hopes they can, win a few games. You get to week 8, 9, where we're at, week 10, and then it's like, okay, we're 1-8. Okay, what are our goals now? It's not winning a championship. It's let's continue to build on what we have started, meaning changing the culture, getting the right guys in here. 2023 is not our winning season. We're now on to the future of the organization, right? So at this point in time, you're bringing a quarterback, hopefully your franchise guy back in to a 1-8 situation. This isn't, I keep asking, you think he's going to come in? Kyler Murray can't play offensive line. He can't play wide receiver. He can't play running back. So with that being said, you look at the weapons that are still around him. I think we're getting Connor back this week, but we're still the same team now with just a better quarterback. Don't expect all of a sudden this team is like going to rip off 8, 9 wins in a row and look so much better than we've looked to this point. This is, I would caution people, our fans out here, this is an audition for Kyler Murray to see how he fits, where he is in his health, and what their future plans are for him. It's all, we're all watching on pins and needles, because anybody who tells you they know what our front office is thinking or this is how it's going to go, we don't have any clue out here, Kevin. So over the next few weeks, I'll be watching. We'll get some signs of, does he fit in his offense, where he is with his health, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have to start reading the tea leaves. If they shut him down after 2 or 3 weeks, that means, okay, they've seen enough and they're now evaluating what they're going to do for next year. But I mean, it's all a mystery right now. I just hope he can stay healthy and they're not putting him out there in harm's way. And, as far as the expectations of the fans, you'd love to see him out there playing well and get him out of there as fast as possible, because it's a lose-lose situation as far as I'm concerned. We're not going to win a whole bunch of games. You don't want to get him hurt at this point in time.
Oh, yeah, and that's the one thing you really have to avoid, because whether you want him to play here long-term or you want to be able to trade him, if he's hurt, it's going to make it way worse. So it's really the ideal situation would be for him to come in and ball out for a few weeks and then be able to just sort of sit him down and keep him healthy for the rest of the way, show enough that you can attract the trade attention, which will definitely be there if he's looking good. And And do you think that is at this point? We haven't seen him back, so we don't know for sure. But at this point, do you think it is going to be a new direction at quarterback for the Cardinals with a trade, or is Murray plan A?
If I was a betting man, I'd probably be 49%. I think they're going to move off of him. They do want to take a look to see what he can do. I just personally, Kevin, as far as, and this system is weird because obviously we've been playing with Dobbs to this point. He's a little taller quarterback, but he's not a franchise guy. And they probably use Dobbs in obviously different ways than they will with Murray, but we're not even going to see a healthy Murray. We're going to see a Murray that's probably at 80 to 85%. And obviously you're talking about they don't want to get him hurt. So they're probably going to even limit him in what they ask him to do. So in my mind, they probably already have an idea. He would have to come out and do something amazing, in my opinion, for them to change whatever thought they have. I'm just thinking with, how today's NFL is, if you can get a rookie quarterback on that, 5-year deal and then start over and reset, and then maybe a bigger, taller version with some of these other quarterbacks aren't hugely, bigger than him, but maybe something that fits your offensive plan better. I know they would rather do that than start out. And, he is somebody else's product as well. He's the Keim and Kingsbury product. They have no allegiance to him. So they've probably heard some things. They've said all the right things to this point in terms of, he's our guy and he's done everything that we've asked him to do. What have you really asked him to do other than rehab to this point? He's not leading the team or organization on the field. So whatever decision they have been working on, maybe he can change their mind one way, or he could change it in a positive or a negative route, depending on how he plays over these next few days and, what his, I guess how he mentally either checks in or checks out moving forward as well. So I would think that they probably want to move off of him, but until they make that decision, they're going to say all the right things about he's our guy and everything like that. And what would you expect them to say? Other, you don't expect them to say anything other than that.
Right. Exactly. So, yeah, I mean, I guess it's still very much up in the air with what's going on there. We'll see how that develops. But when you got potentially 2 high picks in the draft, it's very tempting to just hit the reset button because it's like, well, when are we going to have the number 1 and maybe another top 15 pick at the same time again to really reshape the franchise? And then if Kyler looks good, you could potentially flip him for at least a day 2 pick, I would think. The contract obviously makes it a little bit difficult, but I mean, teams are ravenous for the quarterbacks at this point. We know, and Falcons fans know, that he might be on Atlanta's list when the dust clears. We'll see, but
absolutely.
But curious what you guys, new head coach in there with Jonathan Gannon. Obviously the team's 1-8, but how do you guys feel about the job he's done? I mean, obviously put into not a great situation, so you're kind of grading on a curve at this point.
I actually like what Gannon has done to this point. He's still learning on the job, Kevin. I watch him sometime, and the staff, they're really conservative. They're, they don't want to do the wrong thing. Sometimes you can tell that, but even the way they used Joshua Dobbs while he was here, it was like I could see if I was a fly on the wall in some of those meetings, they would be preaching, Josh, whatever you do, just don't, we can't have you turn the ball over. You got to protect it. And in saying that, their game plan has been ultra and uber conservative as well. But obviously we're working with not a whole lot of weapons or anything like that. So some would say, well, what are you supposed to do? In this situation, I would have expected them to come out and maybe just every now and then just throw the ball down the field, a few more tricks and gadgets and things, because it's not like, we're working with superior talent, but in all, I like the fact that we not only in the beginning, especially, we were in these games playing well. And I told the fans at the beginning of the season, it's not going to be about the wins and losses. It's going to be about how this team is out there performing. Are they giving up like Denver did in Miami at the beginning of the season? You could tell those players they had checked out. We have not had that. Even in our losses, we've had guys flying to the ball, playing hard. Even when we're outmanned as far as talent, team is still giving it everything they've got, just working with inferior product on the team, on the field. And then also you can tell he's building toward getting the right type of guys in the locker room. It's the cliche thing, the culture thing. Yeah, he set some different rules and standards for guys where it gotten kind of loose with Kingsbury, late to meetings, eating in meetings. These are things he changed, and for the good. There's a little more respect going on out there, and they're playing hard. So that part of it I like. He's just been working with, like I said, backup quarterback, no offensive line. You can stack the deck against him, but I do think he's done a good job getting to this point. Now we just got to get him where he's, hey, got to be a little more aggressive from time to time and open it up. And I think with a better quarterback situation, we'll see that and moving forward, because this isn't about 2023. We all knew what this year was going to look like. This is about moving forward. And I think he's done a good job to this point, and he'll continue to get better at his craft.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think it's been very encouraging. The win-loss record doesn't exactly reflect a ton this year, because we all knew that the Cardinals were dealing with maybe the worst situation of any team. So you're just looking for hope. And I think Gannon has shown enough to encourage you for the future. But yeah, let's get into these matchups, because you mentioned the Cardinals offensive line being a big issue, and Paris Johnson was definitely a guy that the Falcons were rumored to be interested in. He's having a tough rookie season, just not overly surprising. It's a tough position to play as a rookie. Does look like Will Hernandez has been a bright spot at guard, but the rest of the spots, DJ Humphries having a down year, it seems like, and Hjalti Froholt is struggling a bit at center, and Dennis Daly at left guard getting thrown in there too. So that seems like that's a big issue. And Atlanta, for once, has actually put together a defense that is dangerous. They definitely got embarrassed last week, and they've definitely been hurt by the offense turning the ball over, I Bleav, at like the third or fourth highest rate in the NFL. But they've actually put together a pretty nice pass rush in terms of pressure. I Bleav they're fourth in pressure rate this year. They're fifth in total yards, and they've been playing quite well. They actually have some guys, especially on the interior of the defensive line, with David Onyemata and Calais Campbell. Unfortunately, Grady Jarrett on IR, but they've managed to get it done there. How do you feel about this Cardinals offense matching up with Atlanta's finally good defense?
Yeah, you correctly pointed out our offensive line, Kevin, is it's a work in progress. The reason it's in such a shamble kind of state is how it was neglected for so long by Steve Keim and Kingsbury during their regime here. They were of the mindset, we'll get to that when we get to it. And every year I would scream, we need to be fortifying both sides of the ball, but especially the offensive line. We would get to the fourth and fifth rounds, and then all of a sudden now we want to address the offensive line. And that was done for year after year after year. And you saw how Gannon and them last year with Paris, they were like, hey, that's our first pick. We're going to go out and start solidifying that. And he's been struggling because he doesn't have a whole lot around him, but he's the first pick of, you watch him next year, they'll get a one or two here in the first couple rounds. They'll find a good young free agent to bring in here. They'll start to shape that, and it'll get better just because of they're finally addressing it. So, that's where it all starts. Our offensive line, it's been a struggle. All the experience that some of these younger guys are getting is going to be valuable when they finally have it all put together. And then, our running game has been in and out, especially with Connor going down. And then our wide receiver group, when Marquise Brown is when he's your flagship number one wide receiver, it's like, wow. He, in most situations, he'd be maybe a low 2 or a 3. So, we don't have the weapons here, but we're building towards something, hopefully. Obviously, quarterback position, we'll see where they go with that. Matching up, especially this week, you guys should feast. Calais Campbell, he's got to be looking at the film thinking, okay, I'm going to get after it. And it makes it a little tougher now if Murray's back there and because he's not the sitting duck and I will say this much. Even while Josh was here, he wasn't necessarily sitting duck because he could get out when they designed some runs for him, and he looked pretty good, but he's no Murray. Murray will make you miss and turn some of those potential sacks into gains, and maybe extend drives by picking up some of the first downs and stuff like that. So he'll give you guys some fits, but then you have to really seriously ask yourself, This is his first game back off of an ACL. How much is he really going to run? And how cautious he might be. And the word for Murray might be safety this week. If there's a crowd around him, I would not be surprised if he just went down and just took the sack. Don't be out there trying to extend plays, or if there's stuff around your feet, trying to get out of, just go down. So with that being said, the defense, the Atlanta defense should look pretty good against this offensive line. If we get Connor back, he'll help in the running game, obviously. But, we don't have the weapons to really scare anybody, minus Murray. But even, like I said, that's the biggest mystery, is how much he's going to be used and how rusty he might be and what they might ask of him this week. In my opinion, this should be a game, if Connor's back, we should turn around and hand him the ball 30 times and maybe ask Murray to throw it 20 to 25, everything in the pocket, short and quick. That would be my message to keep, heat off of him. So it'll be interesting to find out and see how smart or silly, stupid this, the offensive coordinators are this week in their approach. But like I said, it's all a mystery, but it should be a good game for your front and for your defense as a whole.
Yeah. And I think the Falcons would hope that the one thing they've really struggled with is the quarterbacks escaping, because that was the game against Josh Dobbs last week. That was literally the Vikings offense they got nothing on the ground except Josh Dobbs scrambles, and that was the difference in the game. That's how they ended up winning at the end. When Bud Dupree had Josh Dobbs dead to rights, and he escaped, and there you go. That's the end of the game. So on fourth down, no less. But moving on from those painful memories, we will talk about the Falcons' run defense actually has been pretty good. They allow just 3.8 yards per carry, so they probably prefer to see the Cardinals running the ball there, but we'll see how that goes. But on the other side of the ball, it does seem like it's been a bit of a struggle for the Cardinals on defense as well. Also seems like not necessarily any one unit being terrible. It's just the collective unit is kind of lacking high in talent right now. Obviously, Budda Baker is amazing. Everybody loves Budda Baker. But the rest of the talent, it seems like Zaven Collins finally being utilized correctly, having a big role. But the cornerbacks are struggling a bit. Got to shout out Garrett Williams, my Syracuse guy, for his role finally healthy and getting to play this year. But it seems like it's a defense that is vulnerable against the run and pass. Where do you think teams have typically had the most success, and where's the Cardinals defense the most vulnerable right now?
Well, it's a bunch of different problems all at the same time, Kevin. We don't have the dogs up front to get after it. Our defensive line not great against the run, but we can stop it on occasion. But we look hard to get pressure. We don't have some of the big names we used to have here. So if you can't get pressure, what do you have to do? You have to send pressure. But then what do you make yourself vulnerable, because our secondary, especially our cornerbacks, are young and inexperienced and not very good. So do you risk throwing the extra men up there to try to put pressure on the quarterback, but then leave your backside all open for all kinds? So it's kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. So if we sit back and we don't put pressure, then you just give the quarterback time back there to pick us apart. If you send the pressure, you just wide open on the backside. So, that's our problem, is lack of talent at every level, minus Budda Baker. And I always tell people, if your safety is your, biggest, asset, and he's making all the plays, a couple things that happen. Either he's making a whole lot of plays at the line of scrimmage, or he's making a whole lot of plays in the secondary, and that's bad for your defense. So, just the lack of weapons on both sides of the ball and on the front, of our defensive line just exposes us. We've been able to stay in game early, and then eventually those guys get tired, or we don't make the proper adjustments, and teams tend to pick us apart in the second half of these games. And I think mostly is because, eventually they figure out our scheme. We don't have the dogs to switch things up and, be aggressive, and we just get ate up in the backside of these games. So we'll see how it works out this week, but that's been the theme of this team. At the same time, I will say, and I might have said it earlier, they don't give up, Kevin. So they continue to fight. It's just that we just don't have the weapons.
Yeah.
And it's hard to watch sometimes. You
Yeah.
if we just had better talent out there, we might have won a few of these games. At the same time, it's like, well, we can afford to lose even a few more and make that pick even nicer for next year. So,
Yeah.
this is one
Light
of those
at the end of
games
the
where,
tunnel. Yeah.
yeah. And this is one of those games where this one was a hard one to pick, especially, because you guys aren't coming over with, all with the best quarterback in the world either. So, this is going to be a tough one to pick, to be honest with you. That
Yeah.
1.5
Yeah.
point spread.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not touching this one with betting. That's for sure. Yeah, I don't bet on the
No.
Falcons as a rule of principle, but yeah, I would not, even if I was a neutral observer this week. But yeah, I mean, I think it reminds me a little bit of like the Falcons defense the last couple of years, which was like we could see that the coaching was not the problem, but they just didn't have the guys, right? They didn't have the horses up front. They didn't have the weapons in the secondary to take stuff away, and they would just get beat by teams that were better talent wise. And I think that's kind of what's happening to the Cardinals. I don't think they're poorly coached. I don't think they're necessarily playing poorly or making bad decisions. They're just not up to snuff in terms of the talent. But the Falcons, they've sort of gotten away from the run game, which has been their bread and butter. They're still putting up a lot of rushing yards, but efficiency wise, nowhere near as good as last year, where they were arguably the NFL's best rushing attack. It's been a 50-50 timeshare essentially with Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier, which has definitely annoyed the fantasy community to no end. But you mentioned some difficulty stopping the run. I wonder if that's some an area where you think the Falcons should emphasize attacking in this game.
Absolutely. And if you don't, then shame on you. This is one of those games where it should be a heavy dose of Bijan and not necessarily 3 yards in a cloud of dust, but you have to be creative with the running game. But it all starts there for me. And, especially with the quarterback situation, it seems like you guys, like you mentioned, turnovers have been the biggest bugaboo for the Falcons from my watch from afar. If you come over here and establish a run game, what it also does is it'll force us to put extra men up there to stop the run, which then gives you the play action effect and stuff like that. That's always if I was coaching against the Cardinals, would be my approach every time. Don't come over here and try to sling it against us. Establish the run, and everything will be able to be branched off from there. So that would be my approach, and we'll see if that's the way the Falcons go with it. But you'd be stupid if you didn't, looking at the film.
Yeah, I mean, Falcons fans not loving the coaching at this point, so they might not be surprised with that. We'll see if, in the passing game, that the same, complaints still there. Quarterbacks turning the ball over, not playing great. It's now Taylor Heineke for the second week as a starter. That's the Taylor Heineke story, is some great throws and some throws that make you go, what is going on here?
Yeah.
And that was absolutely the case last week. We're still not seeing Kyle Pitts really featured or utilized in a big way. Drake London was out last week and still didn't happen, so that was bizarre. But seems like there's a good chance London returns. He was practicing on Wednesday. We're recording this Thursday morning, so we haven't gotten a look at Thursday's practice report yet. But is this a vulnerable secondary where the Falcons passing game might actually have some success?
Absolutely. And like I said, the biggest way to do it is with some of that established run and get that play action going. And, our guys are young, inexperienced, but they are learning. They play hard. The one thing I will say, we haven't given up a ton of big plays, so it seems like we tend to keep things in front of us, but what the sacrifice is, anything over the middle or up in front, the mid-range stuff is there to be had. So, most teams don't come over here, or play us expecting to go over the top. But if you're patient, I said, run the ball, and then the intermediate stuff, tight ends tend to have a field day feast against us. And that's what Kyle Pitts, I've been scratching my head for the last couple of years watching the talent not match up to the production. And it's almost, sometimes you can blame it on maybe quarterback play, but he's a dude that you would figure that would just be getting off on a consistent basis, and he doesn't. Maybe this is his get right game for you, because it's there to be had if that's the approach.
Yeah. I mean, we're all hoping we can get him utilized, and if we don't see him utilized soon, it could spell trouble for Arthur Smith, who is probably heading towards hot seat territory if he's not already there, given that this is year 3 and we're once again 4-5 at the midpoint of a season. So not the best vibes here in Atlanta. It does seem like things in Arizona are getting a little bit better despite the record, but tougher game, I think, than Falcons fans were anticipating at the beginning of the year. There's obviously the big wild card of Kyler Murray coming back, and is Kyler Murray 100%? Probably not, but is 85% of Kyler Murray enough to get the Falcons fits? It could be the case. The Falcons defense has had, last week was pretty much their worst game defensively. I Bleav they had 16 missed tackles in that game, which was a fourth of all their missed tackles the entire season. So that obviously was not good, but they've played pretty well other than that. So it could be a situation where this could be a bounce back game for them. They have started, despite being 4th in the NFL in pressure rate, they have only 19 sacks, which is pretty bizarre. They've just not converted those pressures into sacks. Whereas the Cardinals, with just a 17% pressure rate, have 25 sacks. So they've had no problem converting their pressures into sacks, even though there haven't been nearly as many of the pressures. So kind of a bizarre situation there for Atlanta. But the one thing Atlanta has done well is play good third down defense and good red zone defense. So hopefully that'll continue this week, and the Falcons will be able to get that done. Offensively, they haven't been able to score points. So maybe a game against a defense that I think is 25th or 26th in scoring. Maybe that'll be the cure for what ails them. But I'm it hasn't happened so far. They have scored the most points. 2 of their biggest scoring games have been the last 2 weeks. Unfortunately, they lost both of those games also. But at least they're scoring some points now. So that is a plus. And 4-5. If the Falcons end up winning this game, going into the bye at 5-5, it's not necessarily end of the world situation there. But you kind of feel like the Cardinals don't really, it's not that they don't care about winning or losing, but they're probably okay either way, because one way helps your draft, one way maybe shows that Kyler Murray's looking good and maybe going to help either his future in Arizona or help his trade value. So it's an interesting situation.
I think the biggest thing for the Cardinals, and I'm sure they are crossing their fingers, and before the game they might secretly do a big prayer, the coaching staff, just get Kyler Murray through this game and the next 2 to 3, whatever it is. That's their biggest thing. The wins, they could not say care less about, but the most important thing is getting him out of here healthy and, being able to evaluate him and then help assist them making their decisions moving forward. The wins and losses, like I said, at 1-8, this season is already over. We just don't want to embarrass yourself by going out and have poor performances on the field. But as far as, playing hard and everything like that, if they go out there and play hard and lose, whereas your situation is a little different, the seat might be getting a little hotter over there. And especially you look at the NFC South, it's there to be had, man. I mean, at 5-4 leading the division, the Saints at 4-5, you guys are right there in the mix. So, this could be this could send if the Falcons come over and don't get this one, this could be I can
dark
say going
times.
to the bye week. Yeah. So this is I won't say must win, but this is kind
close.
of a gotta have it.
Yeah. I mean, it's Arthur Blank, the Falcons owner, one of the most patient owners in the NFL, but you have to think even he's scratching his head if they lose this one. No offense intended to the Cardinals, but
none
it's
taken.
It's just one of those things where it's certain expectations for this team, especially in year 3 now that we have not seen. So we'll see how that goes. But last question, obviously, how you feel? We talked about how difficult this game is to pick. What are you thinking in terms of your predictions for this game?
And we all have to pick them too. And I am leaning. Believe it or not, I have not picked the Cardinals, but maybe one time this year, and I was wrong.
Probably didn't pick them against the Cowboys. Yeah.
This is they still have not been favored in a game yet. This is as close as we'll come to this, obviously 1.5, 1 in some spots. And with the return of Murray, I just got a feeling that somehow they get it done. And and it's not a preseason game where he's on a pitch count where, he's just going to play the first quarter or half. He's starting quarterback. So I'm assuming he's there for the long haul somehow. And this is going to be an ugly game in my opinion, Kevin. This is one of those, like, 19 to 18 games, something
yeah.
like that. But somehow I'm thinking the Cardinals might win it. So that's going to be my pick for the week on my sheet. So I'm going to stick with it and go Cardinals home field. Not necessarily a big advantage, but somehow we figure out a way to get it done.
Yeah, I mean, it would not shock anyone, I think, and you can see that the betting odds are very down on the Falcons at this point, with just the 1.5 point edge. And part of that is Kyler coming back. No one really knows what to expect there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's, I have to pick the Falcons here because if I don't, then I feel like, then I'll just I'll have sold the season down the river already. But I don't think the Falcons are capable of winning any other way but ugly. So it's definitely going to be ugly. They have been scoring a bit more, so maybe it'll be in the 20s this time, like maybe a 27 to 23 or something type game when the dust clears. But yeah, this is my last hope. So if they lose this week, then I'm picked up. We're losing out, and we're getting a quarterback too. We'll be right up with you guys in the top 5. So
there you go.
But definitely going to be an interesting one. A lot more intrigue for different reasons than we thought heading into the season at this point. But Ed, really appreciate you guys. He's Ed Smith at Ed Smith Speaks. I can't believe I didn't mention the Falcons as your former team off the top.
It's all good, man.
Ed Smith, tight end for the Falcons on that 98 team, should have led with that one instead of the Eagles. But I saw the Eagles jersey. That's probably what made me say that first. But
I was just looking. I got to get one of my Falcons ones behind me too.
There we go. Yeah. I was, it'll help my memory at least. But guys, make sure to check out Ed Smith's stuff. He's at Ed Smith Speaks on Twitter X, also host of the Bleav in Cardinals podcast. Ed, anything else you'd like to plug before we get out of here?
We do the national show as well. We went from local to the national this year. We're actually on Sports Map Radio, 35 states, 98 affiliates across the country. Every Saturday from 1 to 3 Eastern time. Go to sportsmap.com to find out if we're in your market, or download the app as well.
Yeah, definitely check that out. I have not checked that one out yet. I will have to give it a listen to. Can never get enough good sports content here, guys. So make sure to give Ed a listen. And I'm Kevin Knight, of course, at Falcoholic Kevin. This is the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed today's episode. Give us that 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. Today's episode was, of course, brought to you by betonline.ag and Prize Picks. Until next time, guys, we'll be joining you in the evening for the Falcons' one and only non-1 p.m. game this season will be this week against the Cardinals. So we'll actually have a later post-game show coming to you guys, but we'll see you then, hopefully with some good vibes for once here this month. November has been a dark month for the Falcons, but we'll hope for the best this weekend, and above all, just hope for a healthy game for both sides. But guys, thanks again for joining us. Thanks again to Ed for his time. We'll see you next time.
Appreciate you having me, man.
Absolutely, Ed. Thanks so much. We'll see you guys next time on Dirty Birds and Brews. Have a great day, folks.